I think we definitely needed to get. I think for me musically, and I think Theo with his voice and lyrically as well. I think we definitely needed to just mature. We would have been incapable of writing the songs that we do now when we were 4 years ago, just because our life experience was very different. Really, we were younger men, and I can't imagine it. So yeah, we definitely needed to go through that period to get to where we are now. And I never kind of have any regrets about that whole period, despite the fact it was towards the end very, very miserable. And we were kind of that kind of dream, the kind of white-eyed dreams that we had when we first met each other had begun to kind of, it turned sour and it turned into a bit of a nightmare, and we were definitely burnt out with, especially being a Manchester band, kind of false promises. And
what do you mean?
I just think we found it very difficult. We gigged a lot and we were always on the cusp of something great happening, and that's...
So you mean the sort of the difficulty of sort of commuting to London in a way?
Yeah. Not really. It's more the obviously we wanted to get a record deal. That's what we were aiming for.
Yeah.
And we were always very close to it towards the end for a year and a half maybe. And it's like a carrot being dangled in front of you. It's very...
Right, okay.
But at the same time we had no money and we lived in Manchester, and it was a very difficult period towards the end of the band, even though the start was a lot of fun.
And you do this thing where you've been doing it for so long. Well, I mean, it's not that long. I mean, it was like 3 years. But that was enough. Two of them on the dole, 2.5 of them on the dole, is like, you get to the point where it's like, what happens now? Do we? And when that band finished, it was the worst point of all, actually. But it was a really strange thing, because the band, we just thought we'd rather kind of, it wasn't working and we couldn't go any further with it. So it was what do? We built this thing up for 2 years. Do we stick with it, or do we kind of stop it we didn't have a plan. We just thought, is that it? Do we kind of give any more of our time to it? And we stopped it. It was the hardest decision we've ever made, because for the months that followed, we just went down, like straight down. It was like we were sat there, because all of a sudden we'd been doing it for 3 years and we had no band. All of a sudden there was, before we were in a band, we were on the dole, but all of a sudden we were just on the dole, and it was like, whoa.
Because even though the band wasn't particularly successful, it was definitely felt like a security. You had security because you had that.
I imagine your lives were very wrapped up in it.
Yeah, it was what we was all the time, and then all of a sudden you're at this point where you go, shit, what happens now? And the insecurity just compounded, because we felt that we'd spent all this time, and then when one day after about a month of being very listless and just sitting there trying to work out what we were going to do with our life, and whether we could really physically give ourselves another go, whether we could do it. What we went up and we wrote some songs. We wrote a song called Unspoken off the album without thinking about it, because we had no band, so obviously it didn't matter what type of song we wrote, because it didn't have to fit into a mould.
Okay.
And we just sat and wrote a song just with no purpose, and it was this amazing moment where all of a sudden it was like everything had worked itself out. It was like, it felt like everything that happened before that point, I can't even remember what my brain was thinking before that point.
I think at the end of Daggers, it felt to me like a runaway train a little bit. It was, we'd made our bed and we had to kind of sleep in it, even though I had an inkling early that perhaps I wasn't comfortable with what we were doing and I wanted to do something better, but we were in a situation where we started to rely on a lot of other people, and for instance, from a production and songwriting point of view, we were working with other people.
Right.
And I think at that moment when we wrote Unspoken was just the two of us with a shitty laptop on a cold winter's day in Manchester in a terrible flat.
So why are we writing then? Just for something to do?
Well, it's because that's what we do.
Right.
And that was where that was the birth of Hurts, because we just did it for the two of us and not for anyone else, and we didn't use anyone else.
And it was this amazing moment where we'd written this song, and it was emotional for the first time, and it was a genuine emotion in it, because the other times we were trying to think about it, and Unspoken was a genuine emotion where it was like, and I listen to it today and it makes me sad, and I go, and it was this moment where we went, oh my god, this is the kind of what it was meant to. This is everything's fallen in place, and then it was kind of, and then it kind of. But at that point, we still had no band, and we were like, okay, what happened? And by the time we'd started that song, by the time we'd finished it, there was Hurts, and we decided in the process of recording it and doing that this is what it was, and this is what we wanted to do, and this was who we were. And by the time we kind of bounced the song down off Logic, we were Hurts, which was a really bizarre thing. And all of a sudden we went, okay, and then it was this bizarre feeling of everything's right now. This is the creative relationship is perfect. This is exactly what we've been aiming for. But then there's that other mixed emotion of, can we really? This is our last shot now, because we were so sat down really and depressed about everything, and we were like, this is our kind of last shot. How do we do it? And
did it really feel like your last shot?
For me it did, yeah.
Definitely.
I mean, 3 bands down the line, like 4 years down the line, and you sit and you go, can I be on the dole for another 3 years? And